Doing something.
Actually, you the chairman's one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, not happening.
On. No, but you are on.
I am on.
That's on.
Okay, I can see it now and I can hear it. Brilliant, thank you. Right. Sorry for that little delay, ladies and gentlemen. Just a minor blip on my behalf. Can't argue. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the meeting to everyone. Nice to see everybody here. I've got to go through some chair's announcements first, so if you could all listen up, that would be really, really good. Thank you. So, and bear with me as I struggle my way through. Okay, this meeting is taking place in the council chamber at Shepton Mallet, and we have members of the planning committee, officers, public speakers and members of the public physically present in the chamber. We also have public speakers and other members of the public joining the meeting on Teams. It is important to remember that hybrid meetings are public meetings and members should continue to behave as they would under normal meeting arrangements. Cameras within the council chamber allow us to film the meeting for viewers on Teams and also record the meeting. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded even if they are not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concern, then please let me know now. No. Okay, please can members who have brought their own device with them should ensure that their cameras are switched off and very importantly that their device, microphone and speakers are muted for the duration of the meeting. Okay, public speakers contributing to the meeting virtually should switch their cameras off and put their microphones on mute until they are invited to speak by the chair. It is not permitted for any other member of the public viewing by Teams to contribute to the meeting at any time. Should any member of the planning committee wish to speak, please simply raise your hand and catch the attention of myself, the legal advisor Martin or lead officer Tessa. When anyone physically present in a room is speaking, please remember to switch on your desk microphone so that those in attendance and the viewing can hear you. Please do not use the chat function within Teams for anything. All contributions must be made verbally. Please can all mobile phones be set to silent, please? And now I've just got to move over for a couple of minutes to Julie, who is over there. She wishes to make a few comments.
Yeah. Right. Okay. You can now hear me. A couple of things. Following the move to Unitary Council at the beginning of April, we are undertaking a review over the next since then until October of this year of the planning processes as they have been revised. As part of this process, we're asking all the members of the committee to complete a questionnaire. Members of the committee, you do have a questionnaire in front of you. Please make sure you complete it. Just to assure you, the reason we've put names on is so that we can make sure that we've got everybody completing those. Clearly, when we amalgamate all the findings, they won't be done so that people can see each individual person. I'm saying that in public because we're also asking inviting members of the public, agents, applicants to also complete a questionnaire for us. I'll bring some over if you've got a pen or whatever with you. Be really, really helpful if you can complete the questionnaire before you leave. It is about how the process was in effect for the application that you're most interested in today. So thank you for that. I'll just come and hand those round shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie, for that. I think we now move to apologies. I have 3 apologies, which are Alex Wiltshire, Adam Boyden, and I was just trying to think, Edric Hobbs. And we have Heather, who is substituting for one of them, Edric. But I do notice that there is someone else missing. I'm wondering if there is any apologies for Councillor Hart.
Oh,
Okay. And yes, Councillor Kay, you.
Martin Dimmery also.
And Martin Dimmery, yeah.
Michael Dunk.
Mick Dunk is substituting for. That's great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Hart has just arrived, just for the record.
That's good.
Okay.
Well done, Susanna. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. And we would, if my machine hadn't decided to go wrong. Got it. Oh, hold on, it's not doing what it should do. No, maybe it will. Okay, we go to page 13. Just let me know if there's anything that you're not happy with, okay? Please, thank you. So page 13, page 14, page 15, page 16, page 17, page 18, page 19, page 20, page 21, page 22, page 23, and page 24, page 25, page 26. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 3.
We'll need a proposer and a seconder.
Oh yeah, can we have a proposer and a seconder? Proposed by Martin, seconded by Tony, Councillor Robbins and Councillor Martin there.
All in favour, Chair?
All in favour?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
Excuse me, I was not present, so I cannot vote for or against, so abstain for it. Thank you.
that's fine. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to, once I can find it on here. Agenda item 5. Okay.
Declarations of interest.
Oh yeah, we have declarations of interest first, which can I make an on this particular one? I believe this is the one that possibly we need to make a group declaration because we all know the one of the objectors. Is that okay with everyone?
There are several options.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Would you like to explain what, Martin? a little
Yes,
bit?
Chair. This is in relation to planning application 2022-1945 REM. That's the land northeast of Torview, Tor Road, Westbury, Sub-Mendip, which is item 5. One of the objectors to the application is an elected councillor. I'm presuming that we're presuming that all councillors know the councillor, and therefore I think it's appropriate. We think it's appropriate that that's recorded in the minutes. Obviously, it's for each individual councillor to decide whether they have a prejudicial interest in the application because of that. I've given advice to a couple of councillors earlier today that a professional relationship between colleagues would not count as a in my view, as a prejudicial interest. It needs to be more than that. A close associate, relative, or close friend would cross the line probably. So if it's for each individual member to decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. So everybody understand and everybody happy? Okay, that's great. Thank you. So we'll move into the case officer, who is, oh, sorry. Yes, Martin.
Yes, I'd like to declare an interest on item number 9, agenda item 9, please. I'm going to say it's a personal one. We've been using this restaurant for I don't know how many years, over a very long period of time. We've got to know and within the ownership of the current, of the applicant. Therefore, I can say that we are acquaintances of the applicant, but I'm making it a personal interest, not prejudicial. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. That's great. Okay, now, is anybody else? Benty.
Agenda item number 9. I am a customer in the establishment, and I have been for several years. And that is as far as my relationship goes, that it is a very good place to go. But I am paying for my food when I go there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Benty. Very good. I think it's noted that, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Okay, we'll move on now, and we will get started on agenda item 5, which is the case officer will be Kelly. If you would like to present your case, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay? Okay, this site refers to land northeast of Top Road, Westbury Sub-Mendip. The site is lined by vertical rocks set within a bowl of a site and is surrounded by agricultural land and in a vineyard. I don't know why that second slide isn't showing. Do you? I think we've got delay. I'm trying to show you a site plan, but it's not moving on for some reason.
Do you want to try to take unsharing and then resharing?
Unsharing, reshare.
And we're going to get IT.
Let's do that. I'm sure I've got something going through my veins, you know, Chairman. IT does not like me.
And if not, perhaps reshare.
You were sharing the wrong time.
I think it always was.
Yeah.
You're
Sorry,
struggling
Chair,
now, Kelly. Is it going to work now?
I don't know. It was working when we practiced, but it's not working now. So I think she's gone to get the IT chap to try and sort it out. So apologies.
Okay, we'll twiddle our fingers for a couple of minutes.
Move or can test view first?
Hmm?
So, yes, it's, I don't think, that's fine. It's not moving, let me try it. That's hardly seen. And then you've got this one. Okay, that is back. Some of that's projects out there. Correction. To support that.
Kelly, would it be any help to you if we moved on and done number 6 and came back to your number 5?
That's fine by me, Chair.
We're just phoning the IT support.
Amazing, nothing else declares it lost. Must have been. It's just around the corner from us. It's we're our nearest place.
Where's the block?
Yeah.
I'd love to know.
Oh, yeah.
Section through there.
Worth going while they're still here.
What are they doing?
It's not solid, isn't it? I mean, it's the drive. I mean, it's just
The same people for a long time.
40 years. But it's, yeah, it's a bistro which works, but nobody wants to take that sort of, you know, if somebody wanted to live in a small town, have a nice breathing.
Behind you, it has showing rafters and your right, yeah. But even so, why would you not show the roof?
So sometimes you
Maybe
should
just
close
leave
it
it
down
open
and
once.
then open it. So you've got to open once.
Because this bit is jutting out.
I can't understand why the roof isn't. It's just on the-
Just to let everyone know that unfortunately our IT support has left the building, but Debbie is sourcing, we think it's a Wi-Fi problem, and she's sourcing a new Wi-Fi code. So if you can bear with us for a few more minutes, please.
Very difficult. The office left the building as well. Very difficult. Because we're all questioning our air.
Wow.
Well, it's different sort of food, different this, but it's still competition. Well, it's got one on the high street. Name always escapes me. All national companies with the power to get good discounts on everything because they're buying bulk.
No, I mean, Gloucester's had status at one point. But actually, a lot of people supported it from all over. Yeah, I mean, it's lost that position now. Yeah, the owner's not particularly interested in bearing what they have to offer, which I mean, works for those who regularly go.
But we have, when we go out, we have a expectation, we go there. Not very adventurous. Say that we always go to the same couple of places. We only get Sunday lunchtime to go out, so.
Yeah, yeah.
It's all online.
It's all online.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to.
Where did it come from?
Yeah, well, there was an update recently.
We're back in the room.
Okay,
Right, great. So you can carry on there then, Kelly, yeah?
Apologies
Okay,
for that,
thank you.
Chairman. As I said, it's in a bowl in a cliff face. The site is surrounded by agricultural land and a vineyard. And you can see on that drawing there where the site is in Westbury Submendip. The green area is the area of outstanding natural beauty. The purple line indicated, which you can just see there, is the conservation area. So it's just outside of that. And then the red line is the development limits which again, you can see on the map, and the site is not that far out of there. Next slide, please. There again is the application site, and the green area is some proposed woodlands as phosphate mitigation, which I will come to in due course. Next slide, please. There's some photographs of the site, the access to the entrance, and again, that's from the gate looking inside the site, and again, and if we can just hold that slide, that's obviously the entrance. So the site is outside the development limits within the AONB. It's not in a conservation area, but it is in the phosphate catchment area. The local planning authority granted outline planning permission for a dwelling on this site, and that permission is extant, Chairman. Subsequently to that, the reserved matters came in, and all matters were reserved, so all the matters were considered, and that application failed on one grounds, and that was lack of phosphate mitigation. So all matters for design, landscaping, etc. were considered at that time and were considered acceptable. This current application seeks a reserved matters application again, with exactly the same plans and information as submitted last time, but this time, Chairman, it's seeking to address the drainage issues and the phosphate issues. So if we just scroll through and look at the plans, that's the layout of the proposed dwelling, utilising the existing access. Floor plan closer up. Elevations. And again, thank you. I think that's the final slide. So I'll leave that on there, Chairman. So as I said, if I just recap, there's an extant outline permission for a dwelling in this location. The principles accepted. There was a reserved matters application. All matters reserved were being considered. It failed on one grounds, phosphates. This application is revisiting all those issues again, but we're looking to see if it's overcome the reason for refusal. And our technical consultees, along with Natural England, have concluded that the drainage and phosphate mitigation now proposed is acceptable. So this application is recommended for approval with conditions and subject to a section 106 to secure the phosphate mitigation, maintenance and management. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Kelly. That's great. We will move on to speakers now. The first speaker will be Mr. Finch, please.
Good afternoon. Everybody can hear me from me? Good. The first point I would like to emphasise is that this development has been approved despite the fact that it is outside the village development boundary and inside the AONB. This should mean that careful consideration should be given as to the impact it will have on the very, very special countryside and wildlife that surrounds it, and the way it affects views from the levels. In view of these considerations, I wish to strongly oppose this so-called reserved matter proposal. It is not merely sorting out details based on the original approved outline application, but is in reality a new application that, rather than mitigating the development's impact on the surrounding area, actually exacerbates it. In the original outline planning, you have a drawing 2, and in there, on the lower representation, shows a small single-storey dwelling with a monopitch green roof, together with a garage alongside, nestled in the base of the quarry, more or less at the top, more or less at the level of Top Road. This, together with the screening hedge extending the western boundary, which is shown more clearly on drawing 1, meant that the impact of the development on the surrounding area was relatively low and the visibility from the levels minimised. In this so-called reserved matters application, the green roof has disappeared. The floor area is significantly larger. The depth of the property has grown, causing the roof height to increase. A large number of celestial windows have been added, particularly to the western elevation, and the whole building has been raised nearly 4 metres, so that now the garage is underneath the dwelling rather than alongside, effectively creating a two-storey structure. The hedge extending the western quarry boundary wall, designed to screen the development from the village, has been removed and replaced by a 4-metre wide path that slopes down into the adjacent field, further exposing the western elevation to the village. These changes are not just details. No attempt has been made to honour the assurances I witnessed being given by the applicant at the parish council meeting that approved the outline application to manage and mitigate the impact of the development on the surrounding area, given its sensitive location inside the AONB. The changes proposed in this application materially alter the whole character and impact of the development on both the AONB and the village, and in a significant and detrimental way, and as such warrant being treated virtually like a new application and not being accepted as an exercise in just defining a few outstanding details based on the outline permission. I ask you as the planning committee to use your judgment and reject this carefully orchestrated exercise in planning creep. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And our next speaker is Ms. Ros Wyke, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. Mendip Hills are renowned for being riddled with streams and watercourses. Top Road has 2 wells within yards downhill of the site, and they're springline points in the road where water discharges in time of rain. The application has percolation tests that show, not surprisingly, good results. The professional statement note that the discharge effluent with phosphates will enter the watercourses and end up in the Ramsar sites, and remedial action needs to be undertaken. If the phosphates will end up in the Ramsar sites some miles away, then surely logic would suggest that the local water supply is also likely to be contaminated, and not just by phosphates. There is no evidence, but not even a simple dye test has been undertaken to establish if local water is vulnerable. You've already heard about, and you'll hear more about the fact the site is designated open countryside in the AONB. You'll hear about the importance of dark skies and the impact on wildlife and the importance of that to the community. You will hear or have heard that the parish council was misled by indicative outline drawings and assurance given. I think it's been a hard lesson for the parish council to learn, but that's the situation. The development of 4-metre drive running east from the building in the direction of the village centre opens up the site instead of the proposed hedgerow and trees. The earth contouring the land on the western edge of the site, resulting in more exposed western wall of the building. The very visible high-level celestial windows on the western wall of the building are going to be very visible. The living room and the kitchen have more than sufficient amount of windows to the south and to the east, and so the western windows are not a necessity. The western windows are high level in a living room and kitchen. They're likely to be uncurtained, and so the village from many points will have an obtrusive light on the rising ground to the skyline to the east. The size, the width, the depth of the building and the roof height have grown significantly. and should be reduced back to something nearer what was in the outline building. You can see the difference if you compare diagrams 2 and 3, where if you look just at the residual amount of ground space of the quarry, you can see that they have grown substantially. So I make a plea to the planning committee. If the building goes ahead as it is, can you condition or subject to revised plans to show that the western side of the building has no openings and windows, and all permitted development rights are removed in respect of that side of the building? This will safeguard the light impact of the building on the community.
I have to hurry you up, Rose.
Okay, half a sentence. This will safeguard the light impact on the building for the community, even though the structure will still be visible and it's no longer nestling in the quarry. The light issue and pollution would be addressed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ros. Next we have from the Parish Councillor, Mr. Chris Langdon, please.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Chris Langdon. I live in the village of Westbury Submendip, but I'm not a parish councillor. The parish council has asked me to read out their statement, as other councillors normally doing this are not available today. The parish council and the wider community value and respect the AONB landscape and environment of our community. Local support letters at outline stage were submitted on the basis that this dwelling could be developed in a way that would respect its high-profile location in the countryside. The council deliberated at length at outline planning stage, recognising that it was in designated open countryside, outside development limits, and in an area of outstanding natural beauty. And yet housing should be supported where it can be developed in respect to respect the countryside location. We were promised that the development would respect the prominent position on the apex of a rounded slope, visible from many locations and within the AUNB. We were promised that a green roof would be considered, that the slope of the roof would run with the sloping landscape. What we have is an angular hard roof jutting out of the quarry. We were promised that waste aggregate that has raised the floor of the quarry would be removed so that the house could nestle inside the quarry. What we have is more soil deposited and no fixed height for the finished floor level or roof. The height of the building too, as you've heard, has suffered planning creep from the original proposals, and the western and southern aspects of the building are now a two-storey building, appear considerably taller than the original proposal, and makes the structure more visible and the impact in this location unacceptable. The outline application included a landscape and visual assessment, which stated that the western edge of the site would be planted with trees and native hedgerows to help screen any oblique or views from nearby houses. Instead, there is no planting, and the field to the west of the house has been contoured to create room for a second 4-metre wide drive, dropping down into the direction of the village centre, making the western side of the development prominent on rising land, ensuring that the building is very visible in the community. This second access to the dwelling is not mentioned anywhere except an extreme edge of the site plan. The proposal includes massive amounts of glazing that will light up the property from 3 directions in defiance of the well-established dark skies policy in the village. Dark skies is a strongly supported principle in Westbury Submendip. Some 15 years ago, all the streetlights above the A371 were switched off and removed. Ongoing surveys show that a dramatic increase in glowworms, owls and bats that demonstrate how effective this policy has been. The planned glazing on this building will be detrimental to wildlife, will be very visual and obtrusive, particularly on the western side of the property, and will be seen directly from the village, ensuring views of the eastern dark skies are severely compromised. The current proposal creates an unacceptable impact in this sensitive location. The design could be improved, and if this was insisted upon, could live up perhaps to those promises made. The building height needs to be reduced, the roof design could be softer. The finished floor heights and ridge heights should be locked in to heights above sea level, or certainly above the adjacent highway, to fix the height in the landscape.
Your 3 minutes are up, Mr. Langdon. If you'd like to close up, please.
Last 2 lines. The high-level windows on the west and northwest elevations are unnecessary and should be removed. There's a lot of other glazing. This will go some way to limit the light impact of the building and on the community, even though the structure will remain visible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Next we have, I believe, I'm just looking through here. We have Councillor Heather Shearer, who is the district councillor, the Somerset councillor for this area.
Thank you so much, Chair. As the Chair just said, I'm speaking as the ward or division member for Mendip West, and I'm speaking really in support of the parish council's views. And thank you for Mr. Langdon for setting many of them out very well there for us. So I'm speaking because in support of the parish council's views, and to say that they were very carefully considered at the time this was first raised back in 2020. My understanding is that they sought to balance the fact that the site is in designated open countryside. It's outside the development limit and within the area of outstanding natural beauty. But as Mr. Langdon has just said, of course, we absolutely understand that this is a brownfield site. It's within a disused quarry, and we need to be supportive of house building. So it was quite finely balanced when it was discussed. At the outline stage, the property was to be well within the quarry, with explicit measures to reduce its visibility. These included the green roof you just heard about to reduce the impact from the levels and moors, and the extension of the western quarry wall by hedging to obscure what they described as at best glimpsed views. We now see something was more akin to a two-storey building proposed, no green roof, and of course with this exposed elevation on the west with the so-called celestial windows, which take the windows right up to the apex level. And this is on the very side of the property that the outline proposal itself identified as needing to be obscured. There's also the new 4-metre wide access into the field. This is wide enough for two-way traffic, so it could be intended as an informal access, but that question is speculation. The fact is the aperture is on that western side again, where there might have been a hedge, exacerbating again the property's prominence from what is a long-established dark skies village and a very protected area. So on the other issue that has been raised, and you've heard already today, the proposal does state that there would be a sewage treatment solution on the site. I'm not confident about the assurances that have come through about local water courses, so perhaps would appreciate having some more information about that today to ensure that local water courses would not be contaminated. I would ask that if the application is approved, and I will say that I'm in no way predetermined in this matter, I'm more than happy to listen to the discussions which I'm sure will follow. If it is approved, then I think it should be conditioned. And I think that should be, as previous speakers have said, to retain western wall and hedging, to mitigate light pollution on that western elevation, and to seek perhaps independent technical assurances around the sewage treatment's effectiveness or its mitigating the impact on any local ecology. So thank you for your time, Chair.
Thank you for that, Heather. I think we now move on to the applicant's agent, I believe, which is Matt Williams, who will obviously be speaking in favour.
I will be, Chair, yes. So good afternoon, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. So I'm Matt Williams of Brimble Leeds, speaking on behalf of Mr and Mrs Schroeder, the applicants. So you've heard lots of references to the outline planning permission that was granted. It's an extant permission, as Mrs Pritchard confirmed. So the principle of development cannot be examined through this reserved matters application. I'd like to stress that at the outline stage, all matters were reserved for subsequent approval. So matters of access, scale, appearance, landscaping, layout, they were all reserved. There have also been references to the subsequent reserved matters application that was refused last year. I think several of the speakers seem to be going from the outline permission to this application before you, but without actually mentioning that the reserved matters for this exact same development have already been determined by the council, and the only reason it was refused on was the phosphate impact. Now, the council's expert advisors have looked at that phosphate mitigation. That's the council's ecology service, Natural England, but also there have been concerns about drainage, and I think the committee report also confirms that the council's drainage engineer has looked at that. So all three of those parties, they're all independent. They weren't commissioned by Mr and Mrs Schroeder as the applicant. They've been considered impartially by the council. And your expert advisors are saying that that phosphate mitigation is absolutely acceptable. So what you're being asked to consider is effectively the exact same development as what has already been considered by the council, with no changes whatsoever. And I would respectfully suggest that you cannot just set aside that reserve matters decision from last year, because that was a material consideration and there have not been any material changes in policy circumstances that would allow you to reasonably review or revisit those reserve matters that have already been considered and accepted. You've heard concerns about the AONB impact, but you'll note on page 34 of your report that the Mendip Hills Area of Outstanding Natural, the AONB partnership were consulted, but had no comments to make. And I think that's indicative of actually how they feel about this, in that they haven't identified any concerns through this application. So for those reasons, we sincerely hope that you will accept the officer's recommendation, subject to the conditions recommended and the Section 106 agreement. Thank you for the time. I'm happy to answer any questions through you, Chair, at your discretion. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Okay. Okay, we move on to members. Who is going to open for members? Who would like to have the first chat? I can see you. Oh, yes. Hello, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few points of information to start with. I was on the planning board when this came as an outline application, and it was one where I went to visit the site and I had some concerns about whether it would be visible, and I wanted to put some conditions on it to make sure it wouldn't be visible from the AONB or from the village. At that meeting, because I did not, what we used to do in the Mendip Council, we used to have to raise an item for discussion. I was unaware of that because at the time I'd been away when it had happened before, and I tried to raise the item for discussion and I was told that I could not do so. So this has never actually been debated before. This went through on officer recommendation at outline stage, okay? The second time it came, the reserved matters that the agent has just mentioned, that it came to planning board. The chair at the time, Damon Hooton, and the vice chair, Nigel Hewitt Cooper, looked at the officer recommendation and agreed that with the officer recommendation to refuse it on one ground only, which was the phosphates issue. That means that this application, just as a matter of information, has never actually come to planning board before, which is not quite what we were led to believe in one of the emails that we received. So that's just the first thing for a point of information. I have a lot of concerns, having listened to the other all the speakers, and all I would just say is that if we are minded to approve, I would like to ask that some of the things that were suggested, for example, that no openings or windows on the western side would be allowed to prevent light pollution. I don't know if we can do a reduction in height now because we've got the plans that are before us. However, and I don't know if the contouring, perhaps the officer can tell me if the contouring to the western side has already taken place, which has exposed that western side. And if so, can we bring back some kind of landscaping plan that would actually shield that western side from the village, to also help with just the visibility of it, really, looking at it from without. I'm not really happy about it having two access points. We were led to believe I was led to believe at outline stage it was only going to have one access point. And I think the other thing I just need to explain, I wrote to Tessa, and you explained to me, Tessa, about also the Natural England comment. The Natural England comment is a bit confusing. I didn't really understand half of it on page 34. And Natural England said that it noted that our authority, as the competent authority, has undertaken an appropriate assessment of the proposal in accordance with regulation, this, that and the other. And what they seem to be saying is that they will go along with whatever Somerset Ecology says. And I understand from from Tessa that that is what the case is, that actually that they haven't done their own assessment, but they'll go along with our assessment, and our assessment is based on what Somerset Ecology has told us. So I'm a bit concerned, as lots of you will know.
Can we hold on a second,
Yeah,
Helen?
just to comment on that, I don't think it's so much as they're going along with us. They have considered that in a detailed assessment as well, but they've not written an appropriate assessment. So they have gone through their own assessment process. It's not just them leaving it to us. They have considered that.
Just lastly on drainage, because we are going to be attaching more weight to the phosphates issue here, I am slightly concerned about the fact that there's wells down the road. We quite often get statutory consultees that will say, that would tell us something, and they don't have the local knowledge that local people have. I've had some in my ward where, you know, the drainage engineers have said it's fine, but all local people know that the land gets flooded or the lanes get flooded in certain sorts of weather. So I want us to sort of attach some weight really to what local people are saying about the wells further down on the road that spring up on the road during wet weather, and that actually we need to be a bit careful about this whole phosphates thing. And although the land drainage engineers might say that it's all fine, I am slightly concerned. It is a limestone area. Of course, the percolation's going to be good because it's limestone, but that's in some ways a bad thing when you're going to have phosphates going into our watercourses. So I am slightly concerned about that. And I don't know if there's any extra conditions. I think somebody suggested that we need assurances as to whether the drainage is going to work. And also I wondered, how is it going to be checked? Because we have a very small enforcement team. How are we actually going to check that they do it properly afterwards? Because what tends to happen is we don't go out and check these things. We wait until somebody complains about something and then we go and look at it after things are built. So I'm a bit concerned about how we're going to check that they do it properly. Thank you. I don't know if you got all that, but that was it was the most important thing being the drainage issue. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Helen. Very informative. I believe that Martin would like to come in now, our legal advisor.
Thank you, Chair. It's just in relation to the previous planning history of the site. As has been said, the outline application, outline permission was granted for the principle of this development. So that is extant. So that is, we cannot now question the principle of a dwelling on this site. The more difficult area is the previous refusal of the earlier reserve matters application. And that is part of the planning history of this site now. So that is a significant material consideration for you in the determination of the application in front of you tonight. Regardless of who made that decision or how that decision was made, that was a decision of the local planning authority. So it is on the planning history, and that decision didn't raise any issues to access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. The only issue it raised was in relation to the phosphates, which is why this application had to be resubmitted so that phosphates could be addressed. So whilst it's open to members to consider and discuss matters of scale and appearance, I have to say if it was moved for a refusal on the basis of, say, appearance or layout, then I'd have to warn members that could be an unreasonable decision, because the local planning authority has already, in a previous decision, say that those issues didn't warrant refusal. Now, I know that's not, that's uncomfortable for members sitting on this committee who's never seen this application before, but that would be my advice.
Can I just have an answer to the drainage issues as well,
Thank
please?
you, Martin. Who's next?
Can I have a response to the drainage issue, please, about how we can enforce it and make sure that it actually works, or
Yeah, I mean, in terms of PETP, there's a condition about maintenance on there, and that includes details which need to be submitted of ongoing annual monitoring arrangements. So there's that measures in place for us to have that information submitted to us. No, the local authority aren't going to be checking it on a yearly basis, given the amount of applications we have and the amount of development we have. So we are reliant on people complying with development. But I think with that condition in place, it does give us a good position to check it if we needed to in the future.
Would like to come in now, please.
Thank you. the process that that's gone through is what really is exercising me at the moment, and I absolutely understand and I appreciate. I'm very glad to have Martin here to tell us what we can and can't do. I guess that I absolutely understand what now, although I must admit, one thing is I could not see, if I just looked at the planning portal, I could not see what had happened with that reserve matters application before. It might be my lack of experience around using the portal, but I cannot see that that has happened. Even if I look for related cases, it simply talks about the outline. It doesn't talk about the one that's gone before. Now that might be me not seeing it, but that's one issue I have. The second, and I couldn't see it, so I feel all of Councillor Kay's pain with that one. The other question is absolutely, if there has been a decision made previously, then we have to be careful about what we're allowed and not allowed to do when it comes to refusal or approval. But presumably, if we are looking again at the reserve matters, admittedly, it was only refused on one reason. Could we attach conditions around the appearance of the building? Not to say that we don't, I think it's great to put a building in a disused quarry, frankly. I'm not against that at all. I think having a building there is a great idea. But are we able to put conditions around the appearance and screening, or indeed the landscaping? I think that Helen also mentioned.
Okay, thanks. Tessa, would you like to answer?
You can have conditions that are related to appearance, but you can't ask for redesign of the scheme through conditions. So, for example, you could ask for a condition stating that you want details of the levels to give you comfort on proposed and existing levels. Or you could ask for conditions to obscurely glaze a window, but you couldn't ask for a reduction in height or anything fundamental to the scheme that would require a change in the design. You have to consider what's in front of you today.
Thank you. I hope that answers you, Heather. Yeah. Okay. Who else? Any questions? Yep, I can see you've got a question, Mick.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I did. I had a look at this and I did look back. Actually, there is an application you can look at, which we have a photocopy from here showing the plan previously. And it's strikingly, there is a bit of creep, I think, in terms of height. So I did try to work out exactly how much, but I think it's just obviously sitting up where it comes to the west. It comes past the wall, which is shielding it, and comes up past it to be visible. Now, if you were trying to put something into the landscape, would you paint it white? And would you use Portland white sills on the windows that are prominent at that height? I would suggest that's probably not a great idea. And that's what the applicants have done. Now, it is visible. I mean, it doesn't, the back and all those windows is a light leak into dark skies, which I think is probably a bit of a shame, where the blinds could be added to govern the emissions at night from that. It doesn't obviously overlook anyone, but it's the west that's prominent, and that does jut out into the landscape, and it might do slightly more than I think the previous indications in the earlier planning might have suggested. So I would want, I would certainly want maybe to consider adding a change to that colour render, fashionable though it might be, because it might just make it settle into the landscape a bit more. Yeah, they use local stone lower down on the building, but not higher up where it's rendered. So I'm not saying you should change it to stone, but I just think that colour is just going to stick out in the landscape. Otherwise, I think, you know, it's a shame they've lost the green roofs. Actually, this drawing is an earlier drawing that we've been given here by one of our speakers today. It actually says at the outline permission that it will be sedum. Obviously, we've lost that, and I don't know what the standing seam roof will look like with the sun glinting on it or from a distance. But be that as it may, we've got to approve it on or condition it on what we see here. So I would definitely want something done, I think, about the screening of that western side in an AONB. Thank you.
Thank you, Mick. Tessa, would you like to say something?
Yeah, thank you for those comments. In terms of the couple of points you mentioned in terms of light spill, I think we could add a condition on to request a lighting strategy to reduce light spill, and that may be through blinds or downward lighting or other measures. I think that is reasonable. And in terms of materials, we could ask for, I do think there's a condition, Kelly may correct me, in terms of getting samples of materials. So looking at the render sample to look at a recessive colour as well. I don't think that goes too far away from the approved or from the plan submitted.
And what about the
It's a bit more tricky. Landscaping is a reserved matter, so landscaping is being considered at this stage. So it's more tricky to add on a condition in terms of landscaping.
Thank you for that, Tessa, and thank you, Mick. Okay, I'm looking around to see if there's any more. Yes, there is. Claire, you have something.
So potentially we've got to make the best of a bad decision with the reserve matters. Why can't we consider some of the stark changes in the planning, this planning being in front of us? Why can't we? I can't see the logic in that. That means people are misled in the first stage potentially. So I'm just confused by what we're actually having to decide on.
The outline
Yeah.
The outline application was outline only with all matters reserved. So that plan that you've got in front of you was indicative only. So that no weight should be given to that plan because it's not an approved plan. It was just submitted in support of the application at the time. And maybe people did understand it differently at the time, but it's not conditioned. There's no conditions to say it must be a certain height. So there hasn't been any planning creep effectively because that was never an approved plan. It was just indicative of what could come forward.
Thank you, Tessa. Martin, do you wish to add anything?
Only to say, in terms of an outline application with all matters reserved, it's literally a red line around a piece of land saying you can put a house there. And what that house looks like is then for reserved matters. And illustrative plans do come in which show what it might look like, but those aren't binding on the developer. So yeah, that's why you then have this process to go through the detail of what they're actually going to build.
Thank you for that. I see Heather has her hand up again.
Forgive me for coming back, but it's to move it on somewhat. I would actually like at some stage to support Councillor Dunk with the idea that there should be some conditions. I absolutely agree that and I'd look for some advice on the wording around the lighting. So there should be a condition around the lighting plan. I think the mitigation on those huge windows, I think, would be important. I would like to be able to see, though I don't know whether seeing is deciding, but I'd like to see the treatment around the material used on the fascias. I think that's really important, or not the fascias, the elevations. I think that's very important. So I'll at some stage happily second Michael Dunk's suggestions, perhaps on conditions, or say them and he can second me. But the other question I have got is around height. You mentioned we could ask for confirmation on height, and I think we'd like to see what the confirmation is for the heights of the various parts of the building, the apexes in particular. But the question I've got is when height is in the previous decision, we say the height. I don't know, for argument's sake, the height's going to be 4.2 meters, just as an argument. Is that the height of the building, or does that determine the actual height of the ground it was sitting on? Because that kind of level of detail, there was some understanding about there being some of the material that was in there making the floor of the quarry at a certain height above sea level. So are we just going to get the building if they have an extra 6 foot of, I'm mixing my imperials and metrics there, forgive me, an extra couple of meters of aggregate. I don't know what getting the height of the building may not be material.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And sorry if I wasn't clear before. What I was suggesting is you get a plan which had the existing ground levels and the proposed ground levels, and that would obviously then show the height, but just to make sure that they weren't building up the ground. So it'd be the existing and proposed levels, the important information on that document. The height is obviously agreed through the elevations if we've got them.
Sorry. Can I just say I'm looking at the plan now on here, and it does actually show on section XX the existing ground level and the floor level. So it's clear from that drawing that it is being dug in, but you could ask for some additional spot levels if you needed to.
Okay, do you want to come back on that one, Heather, quickly?
Only just quickly to say, therefore, the three kinds of conditions that I would like to see on this application would be around that clarity on both the height of the extant ground or what's expected about the height of the ground and the height of the building, things about the materials to see those, and the lighting plan, if I have support elsewhere in the room.
Thank you. I'm coming back. Councillor Dunk, I believe you're the person who was proposing. Are you happy, and do you have any? Could you outline your proposal, please?
Yes, I'd obviously like the colour of the and the treatment of the exterior walls to be submitted for approval as a condition, if that's okay, and also a treatment of the windows that mitigates the light leak. And I don't think, I don't think we're not overlooking anyone, so it's not like they have to be frosted or anything necessarily, but it's just literally the light leak in a dark skies area, which is a problem. In terms of getting heights worked out, an interesting comparison is how much above that existing stone wall the building is at any one point. So that, for me, that's what I've been trying to use to see how prominent it is. And you can see a triangle of building. If you join, I don't think the two walls are, but if you join up, you can see how much it juts up above that. And I believe that's just what we have to approve, really. I don't think we've got any way of saying we'd love you to put it down a metre or two. That's the problem. So I don't think we can condition the height. The officer will probably agree with that. Yeah, I'm afraid so. And are roofing materials being submitted as well for approval? Will you have a sample of the standing seam roof?
Chairman, as it stands, the materials are written on the plan, so we would be approving that. But if members are looking to agree something else by a condition,
I think it's just getting that confirmation of the colour of the render to ensure that it's responsive.
With a standing seam roof, it could be. I think, does it say aluminium, or does it give you was it tin? Is there a material mentioned on there? Sorry, I didn't go into that much detail.
I believe there is. I think it's grey, but I'll just read and I'll come back to you.
Yes, if it's grey, it depends how reflective it is, but I think if it's grey and hopefully not too glossy, then that's probably the best we could hope for in that respect. So yeah, I'd love to see some volunteer sort of screening by the applicant of their own accord, because obviously we can't condition that, you're saying. So I'd love to see some of that appearing in order to try and help screen the building. But yeah, so basically it's two things really I'm trying to condition, is the render samples and the window. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunk.
I don't know how to phrase that, I'm afraid.
So you put your proposal. Heather, I believe you wish to come back.
Sorry to be finicky. I think it's the reason for the height. I think that, and I'm bothered about that actual kind of specified height in the plans of where the building was going to sit, and then the height of the building itself. It's only from the point of view of an enforcement issue, so that if we think it's going to be at this point above sea level, they start the build, and it was more than that or less than that, which would be great if it was less than. But that could actually be seen subsequently. So that's why I didn't want to lose track of the height. We can't do anything about the plan of the building, so it seems, but we can certainly make sure that whatever is done in line with what they asked for in the first place.
Well, if the plans don't lie, then you've got the plans to go to, because they will give you, at whatever specified scale they are, they will give you the height of the roof above sea level. It's there in the plans, I think. Isn't it? Is it? Well, are they not scale drawings? I should hope they are. Yeah, they have. They've got a scale on them, so you can work out the height. You've got a datum at the bottom, which is 50 metres above sea level, so you can take everything from there and work out the final height. And if the building's higher than that when they finished it, then there's a problem.
Thank you, Mick. Do you need to add anything else to your proposal before we move on? I can see that Helen wishes to say something. You'll let Helen speak first. Okay, Helen.
Okay, I'm not sure if Mick's proposal is for conditions or whether it's for a substantive motion. I think it's just for conditions, in which case I'd like to just add a few things. So it seems to me that, or second what we've discussed, if it's not been seconded all round, which is that we need clarity on the details of the levels, because I got the impression that that wasn't sufficient, that detail on that diagram wasn't sufficient, that we need the materials to be submitted and approved by the officer, and hopefully a recessive colour. It was described by Tessa as something that was not going to be so prominent, and the same with the roof materials. That thirdly, that we're going to have something to control the light spill from the windows, which will encourage them, I don't know, to have blinds or whatever is available to us to do that. Fourthly, what we haven't discussed is it seems as if they've dropped the level on the western side, and there could be a possibility of them building out even further. I don't know if they've got permitted development rights, but I wonder if we can take them away from them if they've got those permitted development rights, so that they don't go out further west or further south. And fifthly, so that's the four things I think that we're trying to add as extra conditions, or to clarify as conditions. Can you just tell me why we can't put a landscaping condition in? Why we can't say that we want to have proper landscaping on that western edge so that it is hidden, so that extra roof height that none of us expected is hidden?
Landscaping is explicitly a reserved matter, which is being considered at this stage. So, no, it's going to be considered at this stage. I can agree. So
Yes,
you can't add another condition on when it's being considered at this stage, because it's a condition effectively of the outline application that it must be considered at this stage.
So we can add a landscaping condition that says that that western edge needs to have some trees or high hedgerow, as per the original indicative outline permission, which suggested that proposed trees and native hedgerow help to screen any oblique and glimpsed views from the nearby houses. That was on the indicative outline. So I would like to see that reinstated if possible.
Yes, Chair. What we're saying is that landscaping is a reserved matter. So there is a landscaping scheme submitted as part of this application. So you're being asked to approve that landscaping scheme. And so that landscaping scheme may not be what you're now seeking in terms of that western side. But this goes back to the issue I discussed earlier about the previous reserved matters approval. Didn't ask for any additional or different landscaping. It approved the landscaping scheme that was submitted as part of that application.
So are you saying that we now have no opportunity to do that? Is that now closed to us, or are you saying that could we have a condition, instead of it being on the main substantive motion, to have a condition on the landscaping plan? I have myself worked with developers after the planning board meetings to improve landscape plans. Could it be that we delegate authority to the officer and the ward members to work with the developers to improve that landscaping plan?
I think that's going to be difficult for the reasons I set out previously, is that in the previous reserved matters refusal, we didn't raise the issue of additional landscaping. So to raise it now and to say that you must provide different or additional landscaping is going to be difficult for the reasons I set out earlier. So that fifth point, I think we have difficulty with. The other 4 points, I don't know whether Tessa wants to say anything about withdrawing permitted development rights. But the three other, lighting strategy, materials and levels, more information about levels, I can certainly see the justification of seeking those.
Yeah, in terms of removal of permitted development rights for extensions, we can have a look at that. Was it towards the western boundary you were referring? I'm not sure how much space there is
Western there. And southern boundary.
Any side extension would need planning permission anyway, because it's in the AONB, so that would require planning permission because it's a side extension. So there may not be the necessity to do it.
Okay, are we happy, Helen? Thank you. I was just going to move over. Benty had her hand up a moment ago.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that Matt Williams is sitting over there, and he was for many, many years our top planning officer here, leading of our planning department. And I would actually like to hear now what he can add to the problem. Thank you.
Sorry, everyone, I'll just be very brief. I just want to say that if you want some extra landscaping to the west, that will be accepted. That's all I want to say.
Right, thank you, Matt. That answers the question. Okay, so do we have a proposal? I want to get on with this one now. We've been on it an hour and a bit. So do we have, Mick, do we have your proposal? Well, Heather was seconding you.
We're now looking at 4 separate things, aren't we? So that's great. I'd like to propose that.
Accept the officer recommendation.
Someone seconding me? Yep, great.
Just say that you accept the officer's recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, are we happy? The officers are happy? Martin, have you got anything to say?
Shall I
With the, yeah.
summarise?
To accept with conditions.
The proposal is to accept the officer recommendation to approve the reserve matters, but subject to conditions requiring the submission of a lighting strategy for the windows, the submission of details of the materials, further details of the levels, and looking at the removal of PD rights.
May I just also add, I'd like to also say that, I don't know if we can do this in our proposal, but I would like to also acknowledge and repeat back the offer from the applicant's agent to actually undertake to look at additional landscaping voluntarily. Thank you.
Are you okay with that, Mick? Okay.
Sorry, Chair, can I also say the wording of those conditions to be delegated to officers?
I think that would be sensible. Okay, thank you. So we will go to the vote now. All those in favour, please show your hand. 10. Anyone against? And anyone abstaining? 0. Right, thank you for that. We've got to move on now to number 6, so I can find it on here. Okay, agenda item 6, which is on page 49, if you're looking for it on your computer. Okay. Thank you. Right, let's just check here. Wait a minute. No, we have nobody who wishes to speak on this one. Okay. So we'll go straight to, where are my 2? I've got it here. Right, okay. We have, I'm looking for the officer. Jenny. Okay, Jenny. Right, carry on. Oh, yeah, I can see it on here now.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this application relates to land at Stonecott, Fries Lane to Mill Lane in Batcombe. It's for the change of use of a parcel of agricultural land to residential garden for the creation of a driveway, hard standing and turning and parking area. Sorry, it's a bit slow in catching up on the slides, but it was working a second ago. Here we go. As you can see, the site lies to the west of the village. So obviously it's the area circled in red. And this is just a closer view of the site. So the parcel of land in question is just to the north of the building known as Stonecott, which is where the marker is. And the existing location plan, again, as you can see, it's the parcel of land within the red line just to the north of the dwelling. Okay, and the existing site plan. And the proposed site plan. So this shows the access off of the lane. Currently, there's no parking arrangements for
the property, or no formal parking arrangements. The occupiers have to park on the lane itself, which causes issues when larger vehicles try and get through. So what they're proposing is a change of use to accommodate a parking area to the rear, along with this access here, which provides good visibility onto the lane. And existing and proposed sections, as you can see, there won't be too much of a change. It does involve the removal of a section of wall and some digging out of the ground levels, given the difference in height. And some photos of the site. So this is looking from the entrance to the property looking north. This is where the access will be, so it will obviously involve removal of a section of this wall. And this is the same lane looking, the one on the photo on the left is looking south. The wall on the left-hand side is the existing boundary wall for the property. The photo on the right is looking north. And as you see, the steps on the right-hand side of that property is the existing access. And cars currently have to park where that red car is on those photos. And this is the property itself. So the parcel of land would be just to the left of the property, to the north. Okay, and the recommendation is for approval with conditions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Brilliant. Okay, so there are no no public speakers on this one, so we're going to go straight into the committee. Now I'm looking around and I'm looking for somebody. Claire, because you are the councillor for that area these days.
These days, yeah, so I haven't got a great deal to say, just that the parish council recommends approval. If you've been to Backham, you know that you often go in one way and come out another way. I make a joke that I've never done the same journey in and out twice, because there's a little bit of a mystery, but you know, the roads are very narrow, getting the cars off the road. I no objection, and I recommend, as the ward
You're proposing that we accept the officer recommendation, is that correct,
yes.
Claire? Okay, thank you. Yeah, Heather, you are
I don't
next.
think that's true. I think Michael was actually before me.
He was?
Yeah, being honest.
Okay, then, Michael, you can go first.
Yeah, I put my hand down again. It's only a bit of clarification, really. Perhaps the officer can help me. Condition 6, ancillary use only. What is the difference between that and removal of permitted development rights? Because if I don't know if you would have to put an application in to build anything on that site, and what those two can, what if you conditioned the removal of permitted development rights or ancillary use only, what is the difference? I'm sorry, I'm going back to school here because I need to know the difference between the two.
Okay, thanks, Mick. Who would like to answer that? Martin, would that be in your realm or would that be in yours, Tessa? Right, over there, we're going over there to Jennifer.
I think in this case, that condition is seeking to ensure that that parking area is only used in association with the property and it's not used for any other purpose, really. So whether it's for other visitors to other properties or anything like that, this is just a private domestic car parking area for that property.
Yes, that's why I'm thinking if that was me and I wanted to put up a double garage, I would imagine that's still car parking. But that's why I'm asking if you wanted to put a little cabin, workshop, anything like that on that area, would you be able to, or would you have to then, if you didn't want that to happen, restrict it to take away permitted rights?
Yeah, without knowing the details of the site, it's difficult to confirm whether planning push would be required for that type of development, or whether it would be in a residential curtilage, whether it would have PD rights. But for certainty, we could remove PD rights if you were minded to do so.
I'd like to, I don't know, could I add that as a condition?
I thought we had to judge things on what we were looking, well, that was in front of us, not what we think might happen in the future.
I think if you concluded that it was only acceptable and it wouldn't change the character of the area because it wouldn't have any additional buildings, then you could remove permitted development rights. If you thought a building on that piece of land would be harmful to the character, then that would be considering what's in front of you today. It doesn't mean that they can't apply and get planning permission for something in the future. It just means that the local planning authority would have control over permitting it in the future. But you'd have to say it's necessary to meet the tests, which you may or may not feel it is.
Okay, I hope you're both all happy with those answers. Now we'll move on to Heather.
Well, I'm probably going to wait for a bit because I was going to second Claire's proposal. So I'm in favour of it as it is. But I think what I'll do is I'll wait and hear people's voices, because if I do it now, it'll force it to a vote. So I'm just going to wait for a bit and reserve my right to come back later.
That'd be absolutely fine, because if you're going to second it, that beats me and saves me having to do it. Okay, thank you. Helen.
Yes, thank you. I'm just a bit concerned that it's an agricultural field that we're going to pave over, and I wondered if there could also be a condition that it was permeable paving, so it'd be like kind of hardcore or something like that. I realise that laid down, or was it called grasscrete or whatever, so something like that. I realised that the bit between the road and the gate has to be tarmacked, and there's a certain distance that has to be in order to stop any shingle or loose stones going onto the highway. So I read that in the conditions. But beyond that, I'm just a bit concerned about increased runoff onto the highway, onto the lanes, because what in my experience has happened where people have done this is then when it rains a lot, you get lots of puddles along the lanes.
Okay. Thank you, Helen. I'm looking to see if anybody else wants to come back. Yes, Benty, you'd like to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that if you are not seconded as Claire wanted it to be as it is on the paper, then I would second it as it is on the paper. And I do not believe that it is right that we are to sit here and make decisions for 20 years, perhaps in the future, when we are maybe all completely different places. I cannot see that that is right, because things can change tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Benty. So we have a quick decision about who is agreeing to do the seconding. Heather?
Could I just say that I think the issue at the moment seems to be the safety, the road safety on that lane. And I think allowing that property to have its own parking would override for me any issues about that. However, if everyone here was minded to put one extra condition on, not about the permitted developments, because I'm really not so worried about that, if I'm honest, but maybe about the permeable or the permeable surface, once you get beyond the splay into the property, I'd be happy if Claire was happy to have that condition on, to consider permeable rather than hardcore or tarmac. I'd be very happy to be seconding that proposal, or indeed proposing it in that way.
Claire, are you happy?
To have that condition?
You're happy with that?
Helen's suggestion. I think we should just approve this. It's
right. I'm going to suggest that we move to the vote on this one. Now, we have everything down, Martin. Yep. Right. All those in favour, Claire and Heather. And the officer, along with officer recommendation.
Yeah, as Jenny was just saying that the plans do illustrate it to be permeable paving.
Okay, all in favour.
Sorry, councillors, could you indicate again? I didn't count.
So this is for in favour of the officer recommendation.
Venture. Venture.
Thank you. And all those against? And anyone abstaining? One. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 7. No,
Chair, may I just ask if there's been a request for a 5-minute comfort break?
Oh, there has there?
Yes.
Okay, well, we can manage 5 minutes, between 5 and 10 minutes, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are we all ready to restart? We want to come for a break. That's great. Okay, so we're going to move on to agenda item 7, and it'll be Jane who will be presenting the case.
Thank you, Chair. So this is regarding the above referenced application, West Hayes and Springs Hill in Colford, change of use from open countryside to a residential garden. I'll try and move these on. I've just done that whole map of Colford, so you can see it's right down the bottom where my pointer is, right just in the edge of the development limit, so it's a bit jerky. So there's a closer, and the issue and the reason it's before you today is you can see in the left-hand slide the development limit literally goes along the existing edge of the garden at West Hayes and actually through the garden of the 2 neighbouring properties. And an opportunity has come to purchase that little parcel of land to extend the garden at West Hayes beyond the development limits, which in fact the other gardens do go beyond, obviously. So that's looking east toward, oh, no, it's jumping ahead too fast. That's, sorry. I am very sorry. Let's go back to the beginning. I'm not sharing, sorry. When it chooses to work, it works too fast. There we are. Back where we were, I think, I hope, and I'll go gently. So that is looking east towards the 2 cottages, and it's just jumped again towards the land at the south that is the subject of the application, and that's looking west neighbour. And again, you can see it's just all brambles outside the line of garden. And I've got a couple of verbal updates as the way the system now works. The first is that the parish council actually withdrew a previously lodged objection, which was when they had a question about the biodiversity checklist, which I mentioned in the report. And the other was we are minded, after discussion with the applicant, to take out condition 3, which is perhaps a sort of sledgehammer to crack a nut in this instance. And the applicant has submitted this more organic plan of how they plan to manage the land and keep it very natural. Along the new southern boundary, actually, we were going to condition, but it turns out it's a contractual covenant related to the purchase of the land that southern fencing must be estate fencing, so it'll be very open, allow views in and out, and allow the passage of wildlife. There is also an informative about clearing the land, which the applicant is very happy to comply with. And we have actually put a condition on this to restrict permitted development within this new bit of garden. As Tessa was explaining, it doesn't mean it can't happen in future, but it'll need planning permission, and it just really protects views in and out. And the recommendation is to approve.
Thank you, Jane. I believe we have nobody speaking to object, but we do have the applicant's agent here, Mr. Patrick Taylor, please.
The applicant. What's the applicant? The applicant.
Am I on? Hello, everybody. So I live at West Hayes, and this is my application. I just want to really reiterate that the land is outside development limits, but our new proposed boundary won't extend past our neighbours' boundaries. It'll just merely bring them into the same line of it. This was a consideration when we were buying the land from the owner. The new parcel of land we've bought is completely not visible from the road at all. So owing to the fact that our property and our garden and new land is about 12 foot higher than the street level, and all of our garden and property and the new land is behind a huge big stone retaining wall. So it's completely not visible from the street, nor is it visible from any footpaths or any surrounding areas that the public can access. It's completely hidden. The only really area that you can view it from is our own property and the 2 neighbouring properties as well. but their views would be best described as an oblique view from their first floor windows. Again, this was a consideration we had when we were negotiating buying the land, and it's something we felt that was quite respectful for our neighbours. One of the main reasons why we sought to buy this piece of land is we're really trying to safeguard our own property, our own view, and our own sort of what wilderness that we have in our garden. We're quite fortunate. We have a fantastic panoramic view from our house. One of the saving graces of it is that there's absolutely no evidence of any human inhabitants in that whole view. There's not one building or any sign that anyone lives there or anything. We're really keen on thinking that should be something that should be cherished and something that should be sort of safeguarded. The parcel of land we bought actually forms, it did form part of a bigger old disused meadow, which our next door neighbour one owns. It's about 3.5 acres. At some point in the 18th century, it would have been a hay meadow, and since then it's been lapsed into what was classified as white land, so it had no classification. The owner of the field that sold it is an avid published conservationist. It's taken us about 10 years of working with him to actually, for him to actually sell us the land. There are other covenants on our field and it was conditioned as buying it. So the fencing is one of them, and also we have got certain things we can and can't do on that land as well. Really, what we're trying to do really is just try and safeguard future development on that site. It's a 3.5 acre site, and it's always been sort of part of our worry that it will be developed at some point. So what we're trying to do, work a landowner, is introduce more habitats there, hopefully reintroduce a water meadow that was there, and ultimately our end goal would be that given enough time and enough conservation there, the site might be recognised that it should have further protection and hopefully safeguard from any future development whatsoever. Thanks for hearing me out and appreciate decisions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. If you could wind up, that would be great.
I understand perfectly the need to safeguard by having the development removed, but I would ask that sort of landscaping requirements is something that I won't have to go through, because hopefully this project will take quite a few years and we're hoping to do it quite organically and quite slowly. So it'll take a long time to clear the site, and we don't sort of want to have to rush it, and hopefully it would be an enjoyable situation that we take our time to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I apologise for calling you the agent and not the applicant earlier. Cheers. Okay, next we're going to move on to the committee. And Barry, I believe that this is in your
it is, Mr. Chairman.
Your division.
And you will have seen that the parish council withdrawn their objection to it. There was a slight misunderstanding of what the requirements were. I'm just slightly worried that we're going to turn an adequate field into a water meadow, against which you have to weigh the applicant's obvious desire to turn it into a garden and do something organic with it. So without too much discussion, I would propose that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Right, thank you, Barry. And we have a fight for a seconder. So we'll go for Susie this time. Thank you.
Just to be clear, it's delegate to permit for officers to amend the conditions, because of conditions in the report pack, which, as Jane explained, will be amended, so it's not passed out in the report.
Yeah, I think we understand that. Yeah. Okay, is there anybody else who wishes to make a comment? Yes, do. Hello, Mick.
I just wanted to point out that I'm glad to see the condition of permitted development rights having been withdrawn, unlike the previous application where that wasn't a consideration. Thank you.
Oh, Helen.
Hello, on page 65, that particular point, it's the fourth condition, removal of permitted development rights, and then it gives reasons further down. I don't know if this is important or not, but for example, I really appreciate what this gentleman is saying, what he wants to do with the land, but there may be circumstances where you move in 5 or 10 years' time, and then somebody buys it, they have a great big a garden, and they may decide that they wanted to have a shed or even another dwelling there. I just want to add, if possible, under the reasons, it says the introduction of further curtilage buildings requires detailed consideration by local planning authority to safeguard the appearance of the site, the landscape setting, the amenities of the surrounding area and residents, blah, blah. Can we add in there to also safeguard biodiversity loss? Can we add that in? Because they might actually do some great stuff where they've got wildflower meadows and all the rest of it, and then somebody else comes along, wants to sell the land or put something on it. And then what we need to then also bear in mind is the biodiversity loss that would occur, or would that kick in automatically?
Yeah, Tessa, yeah.
I think we can add that reason on if you want.
If the proposer and seconder would accept that I just add in biodiversity loss in that list of reasons why we're not allowing permitted development.
Are you happy with that, seconder?
Well, can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? Is
Yeah,
that not
Barry?
a bit of a superfluous condition? The conditions, the planning goes with the land, not with the occupant. So if the occupant goes away in 10 years' time, the conditions remain. So what is the necessity of that particular condition?
Yeah, I think the officers just consider it necessary because they've considered that any further buildings may be harmful to the character of the area. So they want to remove the ability of somebody to erect a building without getting approval from the local planning authority first. So again, it doesn't mean that they can't put a building there in the future. It just means that we would be able to see the details in the future.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, you missed my point. Not the permitted development bit, the last bit that Councillor Kay wanted to add about
the reason.
biodiversity.
It depends. I mean, if the members feel that the reason for putting that condition on is to safeguard biodiversity, then that should be in the reason. If that's not why you feel the condition is necessary, then that doesn't need to be in the reason.
Okay, can I propose?
So that is completely up to you, Barry, or completely up with as the proposer.
So members did not members, officers didn't consider it necessary, but obviously members can take their own decision on that.
Yeah, I can come to you now, Heather. I've got somebody else waiting, so.
It follows exactly on from that point, because I guess all I'm thinking of is if something is denied permitted development rights, it kind of doesn't matter why. I mean, it matters to us the decision we've made, but actually once the permitted development rights are denied, they're denied regardless. So it's nice to put it in the record.
It does matter in terms of the reason. For example, if they appealed that condition, then we'd need to explain why we'd removed it. So it does matter. I mean, the consequences are the same in terms of what they can do in the future, but the reasons are important in a condition.
Yeah, sorry, but only in the terms of an appeal, not in its powers.
Okay, thank you both. Claire, yes, your turn.
Why are we talking about the future of a planning application that hasn't actually been put forward when someone else might move in the future? And didn't we say that deja vu?
I think the issue is this application changes the use of that land. So that land, when the use has changed, gets those permitted development rights, which it doesn't have now. So you need to consider whether you're happy for it to have those permitted development rights. If not, then you need to remove those permitted development rights. So it is something we need to consider at this stage, and it's quite.
I meant the biodiversity bit. That bit of thinking about someone in the future might not have the same attitude to the current owner. I just don't think we should be talking about that.
Yeah,
really. I can't. If planning was different, I would be talking about it. But that's what's happened with the very first. Haven't we got to be consistent with our date?
Right, thank you, Claire, for that question. Thank you, Tessa, for that answer. Yes, Helen, you want to come back on something before we go to a vote?
Yes, I'd like to propose and have it knocked down, please, that we insert biodiversity loss in there to just see who really cares or not about the fact that we have biodiversity loss as a reason not to have permitted development rights. I think it's important. Other people might not think it's important. And I think we are planning for the future. Yes, we look at what is in front of us, but we do have to look beyond that at what could happen in the future. So I am thinking that, and I'd like to propose it. Is there a seconder?
Well, I do agree with you. I want to think like that, but I've just had it trained. I've been trained by the officers here that we have to judge things. So I'm just repeating that bit, really. So it just confuses me when we're talking about what might happen in the future.
Let's hold on and let Martin, our legal advisor, have a little chat.
Just as the substantive motion that's been proposed and seconded is to go with the officer recommendation. So that's the substantive motion. Councillor Kay has proposed an amendment to that substantive motion to add biodiversity as a reason on the condition removing permitted development rights. That amendment, whether that's seconded or not, that's been seconded. So, Chair, the first vote is whether the committee wish to accept that amendment. And then once you've voted on that, one way or the other, you then go to the substantive motion.
Okay, thank you, Martin. So we will go to the vote. So now, and the first vote we will take will be on Councillor Kay and Councillor Dunk's proposal. Would you like to spell it out exactly what you're saying, Helen?
I would like to add the words biodiversity loss and a comma after the word landscape setting on page 65. So we've already accepted that we're going to have the removal of permitted development rights. And I would like to add that as one of the reasons, should in future it be questioned at appeal or something like that. I'm adding 2 words, biodiversity loss and a comma, as one of the reasons.
Okay, as we've got to do this way, all those in favour of Helen's?
Yeah.
You might not.
I think that if we're going to include that in this instance, it's something that officers need to include consistently moving forward in any matter of that's similar to this. Otherwise, it's basically going back to what Claire said earlier. We're just not consistent. And also, I think we can't kind of waffle on like this over every little thing. Otherwise, we won't ever get through any planning meeting. Sorry to be blunt, but that's what I think.
Detail is important.
Okay, thank you, Susie. Well, we're gonna go on with this vote now. Quickly, get it out the way. So all those in favour of Helen's amendment.
To
Five in favour. All those against? All those abstaining?
4. Two abstentions. So the substantive motion now, Chair, is to go with the officer recommendation, but with that additional reason for that condition on PD, biodiversity.
Okay, so we need to go to another vote.
You do.
Okay, so all those in favour?
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Okay, that's passed unanimously. So therefore, can officers look at whether you include that as a reason on similar cases moving forward? Otherwise, we're going to keep doing this, which is an absolute complete and utter waste of time.
I completely agree. Thank you. Biodiversity ought to be up there very high on everyone's agendas.
Yeah, I'll discuss that with the team, but we obviously need to judge each application on its merit, but I'll definitely take those comments, and if it's similar, we'll consider it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're through that one now. Now we can move on to number 8. This could be exciting. Okay, we are there. Nikki, if you'd like to do your presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, councillors. Okay, this application is land at Adderwell Road in Frome. It's for 25 dwellings, a new access, landscaping, SUDs and other associated works. It's a town centre site. It's within the development limits and it's a brownfield site. Hopefully the slide will tick over. Oh, there we go. Okay, so here's the overall site area. The site is accessed via Adwell, which is down here, and then there's a private road. The orange shows the adopted roads. So this little road in here, I've lost my cursor now. A little road to the south anyway, the application refers to as Primrose Court. There is another Primrose Court further south. So we've had confirmation in some of the consultation comments that this access road is actually called Primrose Crescent. In the report, it's referred to as Primrose Court because that's how it's referred to in the application and on the plans. But that's just to confirm, and I'll show you a location plan in a minute to avoid any doubts where the application is, just so we're very clear on that. As you'll see, the site is surrounded by residential development. The Printworks site is approved and permitted, partly occupied. Some construction work still going on to the south. The rest is residential development. So here is the location plan for the avoidance of any doubt where the application is. This plan shows roughly the location of the public rights of way. So there are no public rights of way proposed to be obstructed by them, but they run across an adjacent, to the application site. This one shows the proposed layout. So we can see the new access point. Following a review from the urban design officer, the bottom corner, just about see from my little arrow, was originally proposed to be a pond for SUDS purposes that has been redesigned to include a pocket park. There's also been various other design changes incorporated into the proposal. As you see from the design, it's slightly lower density development towards the central part of the site in here, with slightly higher density on the northern and eastern sides. It's largely detached and semi-detached dwellings. And a click over. Hopefully give it a minute. Crashed.
And share again.
Okay, bear with me all.
Yeah, please bear with us. We seem to have a little technical faults again.
It depends which location it is, either 30 or 40%, depending where it is in the district. So where's the, I think 40 might just be in an area of Wells. So I can get that information and email you if that's the, most of it's 30. Yeah, I think there's a small area that's 40, but if you want, I can email you those details.
Could you please put your microphone on, Councillor Hart? It's only that people at home need to be able to hear as well, and they can't without your microphone. Well, this is sorry, it's a public meeting, so sorry, it's a public meeting, Councillor Hart. So
A question. Well, I was just asking a question for personal information while the technical issue was being resolved. I wasn't necessarily trying to address the public. I was merely asking the officer what the percentage of.
Well, perhaps Martin, as legal advisor, could just confirm that the mic should have been switched on.
Yes, that's correct. I think,
Okay.
I think everything was said,
So there.
said within the chamber whilst we're not adjourned needs to be recorded.
So do you want to repeat the answer just in case anyone thinks you told me something
Yeah, of
secret
course.
off air?
It's 30% in the majority district and 40% in certain areas. I think Wells.
And that's not across the whole of the country, is it? It's across the whole of the country. It's a smaller percentage. So presumably it's 30 here because historically we haven't caught up in the way that
I think different authorities have different thresholds depending on viability and depending on things like land value and other kind of measures. I know Baines is 30% and has some 40% areas as well, so they're similar. But yeah, it doesn't have to. It's not a mandatory number.
And so was that 30% there? Those little ones with a cross on, all the ones with a cross on.
Yeah, they're the affordable housing units. Yeah. Nikki can obviously go into that.
Okay, thank you for that, Tessa. Thank you for your question, Susie. We can now carry on, I believe, Nikki.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience there. Always great mid-presentation. Yes, 30% affordable housing. There's 8 units proposed that are affordable. This one shows the landscape master plan. So this is all up to date other than the top corner adjacent to Caxton Road, where there's an inset plan. So following discussions with the applicant and one of the divisional members, some native hedging is now proposed on that boundary. So that's included in the recommended conditions. Proposed material plan showing some buff brickwork on the walls and the boundary treatments, etc. The surfacing. So plot 13, which is on the entrance to the development, has had some changes to the design to include some more windows to give a more active frontage on that corner plot. I will whiz through the plans, but you can see that they are detached and semi-detached dwellings sprinkled through the site. Happy to come back to any of these if anyone would like. It's probably worth highlighting on just on this corner here that the site layout, the ones with the stars are the proposed affordable units. So that's the 8, which is the 40%. So that includes plots 1 and 2, which are 1-bed flats. This site is taken from the applicant's submission, but it shows the proposed development in the context of the permitted and being constructed Printworks development. And it also shows the access route from the site to the parade of shops built associated with a Printworks development. Some visualisations submitted by the applicant for illustrative purposes to show what the application development would look like. One more. Some site photographs. I believe members have visited the site and a few went in the last few days. This shows the relationship next to Caxton Road. And this is the little walkway just to the north of the site, which isn't an adopted highway or a public right of way, but is used by pedestrians to cross through to also that parade of shops. And this application's recommended for refusal. Sorry, for approval. Sorry, subject to conditions and a legal agreement. So all the planning applications are set out in the report. There is one correction for the verbal updating, which is one additional site plan, the coloured site plan, which is CLS 0.01 revision Q, which is added to the site list. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. That was very good, very interesting. Excuse me. We now go on to speakers. On the objectors, I can see that there are no members of the public wishing to speak, no parish councillor wishing to speak, but we do have Councillor Shane Collins, who has applied to speak. So, Shane, can we hear from you, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I've just got a long meeting, a few quick comments regarding insulation, heat pumps and parking. Whilst heat pumps subject to grid capacity are very welcome and the developers are to be congratulated for this first step, but heat pumps need electricity to run them and proper insulation for them to be efficient and effective. So my question is, why is there not triple glazing as per Acorn's development next door? Why are Persimmons not building to passive house standard, which would negate the need for heat pumps anyway? The national planning regulations are woefully behind the times in terms of insulation standards, and developers need to be building better than national planning regulations. Whilst it may make the house marginally more expensive to build, the running costs will be vastly reduced. So, why are the solar panels and batteries to power the heat pumps not being fitted? This will bring down the cost of running the heat pump, because it can be very, very expensive if it's running just off electricity that you have to buy in. The EV chargers on each house are also welcome, but this is a development close to the train station and Frome town centre. So why not provide each house with an electric bicycle instead of EV chargers, or as well as EV chargers, and a space for car shares? This would cut car use and show Persimmon's commitment to green buildings and new ways of thinking. Car parking. Why are there more than 2 parking spaces on average per dwelling? The roads into Frome are already busy. Surely this is a chance to push the option of cycling or walking and not more reliance on cars. Overall, this application does not match up to what is needed to make our housing close to zero carbon output. Okay, that's not net zero, it's zero carbon output, as is required to keep within our rapidly diminishing carbon budget for a 1.5 degree centigrade increase. I hope the planning board will ask Persimmons to go away and think again and return with solar panels, batteries, better insulation, including triple glazed windows, and seriously look into e-bikes to make this a development fit for Frome and for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Interesting. Right, I believe that we now have the applicant's, the applicant's agent, I believe. Yeah. You are, yeah, Mr. Barnaby Harris, correct?
Yes, Barnaby Harris. So I am planner at Persimmon Homes, the applicant, landowner and developer for the site. The application before you is for 25 new homes of a range of type and sizes, including 8 affordable homes, which is fully policy compliant in an area where it has historically been lower. The site itself is a redundant piece of brownfield land enclosed on all 4 boundaries by residential development. Frome is an historic town with a long-running history and thriving community, as many of you know. They're actively involved in the planning for the town, and throughout this application, we have worked closely with the Town Council and its members to craft the application to the scheme presented today. We have full support of the Town Council in that respect. The location of the site is considered extremely sustainable within the town centre and all major facilities in Frome accessible on foot. Parking within the development has been carefully addressed with Somerset Highways to ensure that a balance has been reached that suits the needs of the town, but also the residents, and also encourages sustainable transport. We've worked closely with authors throughout the determination period to ensure the scheme is appropriate with regards to its scale, layout and design. As mentioned, earlier submissions within the application drew comments on the use of a pond, We have since gone to underground crating of that to provide a more accessible open space. Within that open space, we've had discussions with Frome Town Council to see what they would like. This will include fruit trees for the residents and just be a very nice environment to manage. The public open space will also be planted with wildflowers and be home to features to encourage wildlife and biodiversity on the development. The design of the dwellings themselves have taken characteristics from Frome and the immediate area to ensure that the development assimilates into its surroundings whilst adding high quality design features. In regards to the sustainability of the dwellings, we have worked tirelessly to ensure this is our first development within the district to have no reliance on gas boilers. All dwellings will have the inclusion of air source heat pumps, which have been coupled with substantial levels of insulation in our new range, and that will bring that fabric of the development to reduce heating costs in as well. When these two methods are coupled, it creates a far superior environmentally friendly method of warming the houses, which the benefit will also be passed on to the residents, who in turn will also see a financial gain. All dwellings will also be served with an electric vehicle charging point as we support the move away from the reliance on petrol and diesel vehicles. It is also worthwhile recognising the 5-year housing land supply as confirmed in the Planning Officer report. This development provides a great opportunity to address a shortfall in development numbers while developing a vacant brownfield redundant site in a sustainable location within a principal settlement and prevent expanding into the green countryside.
Can you start to wind up, please?
Yeah.
The 3 minutes are up.
Yeah, as you'll see from the report, there is also a wave of contributions we will also be putting forward within the section 106. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're going to move on to the committee now, and I'm going to imagine, and I'm not even looking, that Helen will be the first person to speak.
Well, it's in my division, so you would expect that. Thank you, Chair. Right, so I have worked quite closely with the developer and the officer on this, and I think it is actually much better than the first application that was first put in, and also with the town council. We've still got pros and cons. It was originally not going to be linked to the print works next door, but we've actually got the road going through now, so that's great. We had to work with Acorn to get that. It was originally an employment site, and I thought this was a mixed-use site. Originally, it was designated as a mixed-use site, but it's actually gone almost completely to housing, except for a few shops on the Acorn site next door. So on the back of that, I'm actually quite pleased because it's a brownfield site that they're not using the excuse of contamination, which they often do, to lower the amount of affordable housing. They're giving us the 30% affordable housing, which is a good thing. That's a tick in my book. It's great to see the air source heat pumps, and it's also good that they've contributed properly to the school that possibly is going to be built on Edmund Park, which is across the other side of the river. On the against, things I'm still outstanding for me. Actually, also on the materials, we've also got a good. They were originally going to be white render or something, or we weren't clear, but they're now going to be similar to the Acorn development, so they won't sort of stick out in the landscape. On the other side of things, there's no contribution made to the bridge going over the River Frome. The Acorn developers next door did contribute to that, or did they? No, perhaps they didn't. Oh, they haven't. Okay, so maybe none of those people living there are going to go across the bridge. I agree with my co-ward councillor Shane Collins, who said that just slightly disappointed that there isn't any solar panels. This is a sloping site facing pretty much south or southeast. It's an ideal site to put on solar panels. Lots of the other developments further out of Frome have got solar on them. And lastly, I would also say that out of the 25 dwellings, we've got too many detached. It's a rather suburban. That little bit in the middle, we've got a line of pretty much terraced houses at the top. In fact, the affordable housing gets the best view looking out over Clay Hill. But then further down in the development, we've got a sort of a crescent, which has got 8 detached, semi-detached, no, they're not semi-detached, they're detached houses, 3-bedroom detached houses. And that's quite a suburban look. And that is not the best insulation standards to, we need more semis, I think. This is not an out of town development. This is a very close to the town development. And on that basis, I just want to question about the parking standards that Shane asked about. I saw in your report that there are 47 parking spaces. Does that mean there's roughly 2 per 3-bedroom house? That was my first question. With the bike storage, I see there's a condition for bike storage. Is that going to be for each house, or is that like just a sort of a place where people can store their bikes, like racks or something that's somewhere on the estate? And lastly, about the insulation standards that my co-ward councillor raised and that then the agent said were very high. Can you just confirm? I mean, they assume that they meet the 2022 building standards, that but no more than that. Is that the case? That they're still sort of just what's required of them, not something that goes beyond what's required of them. So I just wanted to say that, so the pros and cons. I'm actually minded to approve this, but because I've worked, as I say, with the developers to improve it, although I still have those concerns, particularly about the solar. That's the thing that concerns me the most, really. The fact that they didn't have the solar and the insulation standards, whether or not they are as high as they could be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Nikki, would you like to sort of reply to Helen a little bit?
Yes, thank you. I have put together a schedule of parking. So the Somerset standard sets out the parking requirements in this part of the district. So there's a different requirement for each number depending on the number of bedrooms. So the 1-beds have got 1 parking space, and all of the other units have got 2 or 3. Some of this does include garage parking, so they are slightly under parking standards for the Somerset standards, but this is considered acceptable considering the location of the site. Hopefully that's covered everything on parking standards. The bicycle condition, I will just check the wording because I believe it's for each dwelling, but I don't want to say the wrong thing. Yeah, condition 14, no occupation of any individual dwelling shall be commenced until it has its own bicycle storage. So that should control that. In terms of the building regs, the sustainability statement doesn't specify whether that's beyond the current building regs. So I'm not sure, but I can have a look into that and see if I can answer that question and come back to you if possible.
Thank you very much for that, Nikki. That should help Helen in her decisions. Okay, next I believe we have Martin. Did I see your hand up earlier?
You did, Chair. I'm just really endorsing Shane's and Helen's comments, and I would like to see solar panels added as a condition for this development, please, and also the high-grade insulation. I'd like to ask a question as to whether permeable materials are there. I'm sure it's in the paperwork, and I've missed it, but permeable materials are in the ground materials to mitigate against any form of flooding. Thank you.
Yep, carry on, Nikki. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm happy to come back on those points. Apologies, I didn't mention solar last time. It is something that has been discussed with the applicant. It's not proposed as part of this development, and the application is considered as submitted. So on balance, that's considered acceptable considering our policy position on that. So there are the heat pumps proposed, which the applicant has confirmed there is grid capacity to deliver. Also, there's a condition on those heat pumps. I appreciate that some members are looking to see the solar panels, but that's not proposed as part of the development, I'm afraid. Permeable materials are proposed as part of the shared spaces, and there are greencrete on the visitors parking spaces.
Lovely, thank you for that answer. I hope that answers your question, Martin. Thank you. Next, we move on to Claire.
I'd like to thank Helen for arranging a site visit. I found it really useful. and to see the context. And I felt with the parking spaces, there's literally no, sorry if I'm repeating anything, there's literally nowhere else to park. So I get the spirit of the concerns, but I just think what else can they do but have adequate parking for the accommodation there? So I can remember a certain planning application in Shepton Mallet that didn't have parking, called a prison. So I would like to second this as and go with the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Claire. I'll remember that you put your hand up. Don't worry, Mick. Next we go around to Benty. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to know how many decibel noise does these heat pumps give, because we have got places in Shepton where people have installed them, and I know admittedly we have got old houses and they're probably not from 1700 very much insulated, but they are complaining about the noise. So I would like to know the decibel of the noise that comes out. And then these fantastic solar panels on people's roof. Where I come from in Denmark, our solar panels is the size of a double Roman clay tiles, so they are not screaming to high heaven. And I just wondered whether you go for something modern and triple glaze. Yes, we got that quadruple glaze we got in Denmark, and proper installation. The parking, as Councillor Solly said, is very important, because we got Tatley Acre in Shepton Mallet, and they have got 3 different rules of parking spaces available. So everybody parks on the pavement and block everybody out. And if you think that people are not going to use cars in the future, they will. And if not, then electric cars, because they are so healthy. That is really it. I would like to be able to say that I am for this here, but if you have got to live up to the modern world, then God help you, because you won't stand a chance then. Thank you.
Thank you, Benty. We now move on to Heather, is the next one. Barry, I haven't forgot you.
Oh, thank you. I don't think I was going to be next, that's fine. I was going to say one of the things that I think is the best thing about this proposal is the 8 sustainable housing units, but most particularly the 6 which are actually sustainable rent. I'm quite sniffy and a bit suspicious about the rules that we have to work to with shared ownership, because I know how difficult shared ownership can be. So those 6 rented properties I think are going to be brilliant. I'm really excited about that. I share the concerns about parking. I absolutely get where some of my colleagues are going with in terms of coming from, saying that they want to make it hard, but I live on a fairly new estate which doesn't quite have enough parking, and the cars are everywhere. So we're a long way off persuading people out. But I would not want to lose the 6 or 8 affordable dwellings where they're needed for the sake of perhaps trying to make the units better. And so I would be supportive of the officer recommendations, but again, I'll keep that one quiet because I think other people still want to speak. But I'm happy to come back a second when it's needed.
Right, thank you, Heather. I'm going to bring in Martin a moment, our legal representative. He needed to, or legal advisor, he needed to say something.
It was just Councillor Sully seconded the motion, but I don't think a proposal had been put. I think Councillor Kay. Yeah.
I thought Helen had.
I quite happy to be corrected, but
well, I sort of half did. Yeah, you're right. I wasn't sure if it was formal, actually. Yeah, I would like to let the debate run, because I know that my colleague Michael Dunk mentioned something about air source heat pumps earlier, and I want to hear what he had to say about it. So I'd like to just hear what other people have to say before we go to the vote, if possible. Yeah.
Okay. Right, thank you. Barry, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it possible for the officer to put the plan up again showing the houses on their individual pieces of land? So I suppose we're looking at the whole estate. Firstly, please. Right. My favourite question, Nikki, is how big are these gardens?
And what do we do when they fill them up with a conservatory? Because everybody wants a conservatory. They fill the gardens up. We talk about sustainability, but surely part of sustainability should be making our own arrangements for our own food and not relying on it coming from the other side of the world and being cut off by events that we have absolutely no control over. And I would like to see gardens bigger, which means less houses for the developer, tough. Make the gardens bigger so they can do something with them and remove the permitted development rights for them to do anything with those gardens afterwards. The other point I would like to make is the heat pumps that everybody seems to think are wonderful inventions. Heat pumps actually make the cost of heating the house greater. You have to run the heat pump. You need as much heat out of that as you would to run the house anyway. But in addition, depending on how efficient the heat pump is, and they're normally got a coefficient performance of 4, so every 4 kilowatt hours of heat that comes out of the heat pump to heat your house, you need at least 1 kilowatt hour of electricity to make it work. Now, we're being told, well, we might be all right for next winter. We might not have power cuts. We might not have rolling power cuts. We might be all right. And here we are. We've got lack of energy, and we're encouraging people to use even more, Mr. Chairman. And I think this is completely wrong. It might be nice and green and sustainable, but it's not going to work for the future for very long when we've got people running around electric cars using heat pumps and the rest of us got no power at all while we're providing the power for these people to do all these other things. And I think it's a retrograde step. And you're putting people into affordable housing and rented housing, and you're actually saying to them, well, it's actually going to cost a lot more than it needs to because we're going to give you heat pumps. And the other thing I wanted to ask of the officer, would it be possible for this to be made an outline permission with some of these other things to be thrashed out, like heat pumps, solar panel? No, thank you, Mr. Legal Manager. Question answered, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe, Nikki, you'd like to come back on that one, yeah?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Firstly, I just wanted to say about the noise of from heat pumps. Proposed condition 5 includes details to be agreed with the local planning authority before implementation of the heat pumps. So that would include the location and noise to ensure that that would be acceptable. In terms of garden sizes, I think this comes down to the overall balance. Obviously, bigger gardens means less houses. This is a town centre location with good access to facilities, and we have got a housing shortage. So my view is that that density in those garden sizes are acceptable. Granted, people may want to use allotments, etc. So my view is that that density is acceptable, and the amenity spaces associated with each of those units is acceptable. PD rights are always considered. In this case, I haven't recommended that PD rights are removed because I don't think it's necessary. But if members are minded to condition control on permitted development rights, then that's fine. In my experience, you might, if you've got a smaller garden, you might not put a large extension and take up your whole garden. But and in terms of amenity, there aren't really any amenity justifications in my view for removing PD rights. In terms of parking, I also wanted to highlight that we do have Emma and Sam from the Highways team on the call. So if members wanted to bring those in to discuss parking any further, then that is an option as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. I think that answered the question. I'm afraid I've got to go to Mick next. Heather? Mick.
What do you mean you're afraid you're going to go?
Well,
have I got some sort of reputation? I don't know. Can I just start by saying I'm glad that the air source heat pumps are there. The only thing I'm concerned about is that the Persimmon have actually checked with the DNO that they can provide the electricity needed to supply those. They have. But that's a start anyway. We've had experience of them not being accepted. They have to change direction completely. So does that mean that there is no gas on site? It does. So that means there's a saving, although it might cost more to put in, there's a saving on not having the gas main put in, and an additional saving to the house owners of not paying a standing charge for gas. And there is an aspect of, if the houses aren't insulated enough, there is a possibility that the winter bills will be higher than people expect. But that can be mitigated, and this is especially important for people in social housing, can be mitigated by a good, decent PV system on the roof. I mean, recently I've been experiencing, because I've got an air source heat pump, 1 kilowatt a day when it's been sunny. I'm using 1 kilowatt a day because I've got a 4 kilowatt PV system, and and that has brought my bill right down in the summer. Of course, in the winter, it's like that. But what I'm saying is, if I was going to refuse to put solar on the whole estate, which I'd love to see, but if that was the case, I'd offer it to people and we've done this before, as a precedent has been set. The developer would then offer it as an extra on the houses. So that can be, I don't know how that was added. I wasn't on that board at the time, whether that was just an agreement or whether it was added as a condition. And the other thing is, I would really want to see the 8 affordable houses with PV on them, because those people are the people who really need it if you're not going to put it on the whole lot. So, and then the other thing is that because they give out, obviously, noise, you've put a condition where you want to know where they are, the planning officers. That's important because they're not easy items to put in. I've noticed there's already growing things happening in the back garden. There's cycle stores in almost cycle stores throughout at the rear. You've also got the bin located presumably there as well. I've seen it on the drawings. And then if you put the air source heat pump there, I can't see where else you can put it quite often. Good luck with putting a conservatory on there, because there won't be anywhere for you to put an air source heat pump. And when you're sitting on your patio, should you be lucky enough to have one, you will hear the air source heat pump. So I'm interested to see where they do site them, because with smaller houses, with smaller, narrower gardens, it's just very difficult to find a decent place to put them where they're not going to impact on your neighbour or you sitting outside your house, unless they put them in the cycle store. I'm not sure that's an option. Anyway, those are my concerns about that, and I'm glad there's a condition. What else did I want to say? Triple glazing would be lovely, but I can imagine that's probably not going to go down too well with the developers. And the other thing is contamination. Has there been a report on contamination? And obviously there's a lot of conditions relating to contamination. I remember when Cuprinol used to be there, and the runoff from their site ended up, unfortunately, ending up in the river at the time. They've gone, but I'm wondering how much contamination there is on the site, and whether the applicant has actually knows what's there and won't then come back with a viability issue when they discover if there's a lot of contamination there. Are we future-proofed against that in terms of what we're getting here? We're getting 30% affordable housing, and I don't want to see that changed. I think that's about it, really. The
developers have come back like they did before. Okay, thank you for your contribution, Mick.
You get a hand up.
Is there anything you need to add?
Thank you, Chair. Optional extras for solar panels have been discussed with the applicant, but not put forward. I understand this is for financial reasons, that the connections would have to be put into place first, and there isn't funding for that. Triple glazing has been also not proposed. Contaminated land, the application has been considered by the contaminated land officer, and due to the previous use of the site, the full suite of contaminated land conditions are recommended that would include site investigations and remediation works. In the event that this affected viability, then a new application would need to be submitted and then considered, and if that affected planning obligations, then that would need to be considered at that time. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you for that. I think we've got one more person before we sort of work out a vote. Heather?
Hi, thank you. It's great. I mean, this is why we have so many people sitting around this table, because we have so many different views on what we should be doing and how we can make this the best opportunity that we can. And I'm really pleased to hear everyone's views. I'm minded to propose that we put it through as it is, because I'm happy with the kind of compromise that we've got with the air source heat pumps, with a good standard, perhaps not perfect standard on insulation. I live on a new estate, an eco-y sort of estate, which has very high density, very small gardens, but a decent amenity space. And this is a town dwelling. So, and I benefit from having PV on the roof, which gives me hot water for free all year round. That's brilliant. But I also have to maintain it and pay for it and service it and so on. So that nothing is ever free. So I think from my point of view, it may be a compromise. I think it's within our standards and with our kind of policy at the moment, which is as much as we can do. And I'd be happy to actually put it through or put it as a proposal if it was seconded.
Thank you, Heather. Susie?
I'd like to second Heather's proposal, particularly because I think this young man, whose name I've forgotten, has obviously worked hard with Helen, and Helen is belt and braces. So I think if he's met Helen halfway, he's probably literally on top of the rest of us. And you know, it looks like a nice development. You know, as Heather says, nothing's ever going to be perfect. There is no perfect solution. You know, these panels on people's roofs, they only have a certain lifespan. They're really difficult to actually recycle. They aren't recyclable. What are you going to do with them after? You know, we haven't yet, unfortunately, found a perfect solution. So I definitely would like to second, and I think we let them get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. I think we should go to the vote. Heather, Helen, I'll give you 2 minutes.
I don't need 2 minutes. I did have my hand up first, and I was going to second or propose or whatever, because we had several people proposing and seconding. That doesn't matter. So I'm happy to go along with it. As I agree, it's not perfect. I think there's a little bit going to be suck it and see with regard to the air source heat pumps on the back of some of the narrower terraces, and so that is a slight concern. It was a precedent that we had the developer come back on a previous application in this meeting to clarify some points. And I just wondered if we could give the opportunity for this developer, if he wanted to clarify. And do you want to clarify anything, or has it already been clarified by the officer? Because I think she has. Can you come to the here? And Chair's discretion, sorry. Chair, yeah. Is that
I
right?
think you're jumping in a bit there.
Yeah, it's just that
Helen?
it was a precedent that has never happened before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can come in and say a couple of things. I'm just going to put Helen back where she should be.
Thank you, Chair. It was just about land contamination. We have submitted a ground investigation. We have done ground investigations. It was just that due to the formal works, they recommended the full suite of conditions as per standard. So we have had a look into what is under the site. We have done preliminary examinations. So we don't expect anything to come out of the woodwork. But again, that was recommended to Nikki to put forward just the full standard suite of recommendation of conditions because of its former use. Sorry?
I would love you to offer solar for people to be done at the time the house was built. It's so much cheaper to do that. And not maybe for you, but certainly cheaper for the person who's doing it.
I
think that's something that can be taken out of the room and not necessarily for now. Okay, thank you for your cooperation there. It's brilliant. Okay, I think now that we can get there, we can go to the vote. Proposed by Heather and seconded by Susie that we follow with the officer recommendation. All of those in favour, please. And any against? One. And any abstentions? No. Okay, thank you.
Microphone, Chair.
Yeah. We need to move on to number 9. which is Boston's Restaurants at 29 to 33 Waterloo Road.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is an application for the change of, or part change of use of the restaurant to residential. It is currently mixed with, there is a dwelling and the restaurant. So this is, the proposal is to close the restaurant basically and have 2 residential properties. Catch up. So it's just outside the town centre of Shepton Mallet on Waterloo Road, just down from the distinctive viaduct, as most people will recognise for the location. So this is simply the proposed floor plans, just to clarify that it is 2 dwellings that are proposed. So it is an existing and an increase of 1 dwelling. So on the left hand side, you just see where the restaurant is at the moment. There was a workshop that you can see on the back that has permission for demolition, which was a separate application for the demolition of an unlisted building and conservation area. That was approved completely separately. So that's why that's missing from the right hand drawing. Again, that just shows the first floor where it is split between the 2 dwellings. The elevations are literally the simple removal of the restaurant signage. There were no other external changes. So that's what's there. And as you can see, it literally just takes the canopy and the signage off. This is just so we have no issues with the principle or of the development at all. It is recommended for refusal solely on phosphates. So these are the figures presented as part of the application. These are the figures that the recommendation is based on, and it just shows that there is an increase in phosphates, and at present there is no mitigation offered. There have been other bits of evidence presented post recommendation, which we have had to say we can only consider, and the recommendation is solely made on what was presented with the application. So just to clarify that. So yeah, as I said, it is recommended for refusal based solely on phosphates.
Okay, thank you, Lorna, for going through that with us. We have nobody from the public again on this one. So we go to Councillor Benty Heights, please.
I thought that there was somebody speaking on behalf of the applicant.
That will be after you, Benty.
After me, but I thought then that it would have been more correct that the town council's representative was here to speak, because they have issued an opinion. Well, anyway, I am fully behind that the permission is being granted. The family has been in Shepton Mallet for years. If they want to make their restaurant smaller so they can cope with it, or they can sell it as a going concern, it's fine with me. It's fine with most people in Shepton. I would rather see it as a restaurant, but I would also like to say that taking a big part of it away and turn it into a dwelling, which we need so desperately in Shepton Mallet, because we are short of 550 houses out here on the old showground, and we are short of 57 houses down in the prison, and we are short of everything all the time. So I would be happy to see at least 1 dwelling coming in, and 1 family cannot create as much water as runs out when you start this big washing machine. So I will back it up, and I will say that the paperwork that has been done that could not be taken into consideration. So the family should go and say, oh, we will now withdraw our application with all the money and time we pumped into it, and then put in a new application and put more money into it. I can understand that is not viable. So I will back it fully 100%. And I've never been given a free meal. I will also make absolutely clear to people. And although I might go up and say goodbye or whatever, I will pay for my food and my drink there. Thank you.
Thank you, Benty. Your contribution was appreciated, I'm sure. Okay, next we have the applicant, or is it the applicant's agent, Barry Christian. You.
Good evening, Mr. Councillor and members. The main objection of the grounds for refusal is solely on the phosphate emissions from this site. Lynn and Nick Reid have owned and run Blostins for 38 years, and they have tried to retire. They wish to retire, and they've tried to sell the restaurant as a going concern for 6-7 years now without success. So now they wish to convert the restaurant into a dwelling which they can either rent or sell off. Planning report, as the officer has explained, is solely on mitigation of the reported phosphate additions. I just explained that the phosphate discharges are produced by the phosphate budget calculator, which is published on the Somerset website. And because of the nature of that calculator, it produces just explain this, the amount of phosphate emissions for one day, as determined by the calculator, is that much. That's a paracetamol tablet. Whereas for a year, it amounts to that much. Now, the problem with the budget phosphate calculator is it makes no allowance for the loss of the restaurant. There's no way in the calculator that you can allow for the restaurant to be removed. Now, I've been in touch with the authors of the budget calculator, who are a company called Royal Haskoning. And I've spoken to the author, who is on Oliver Bowers, and he says there's no way that the budget calculator will allow for the inclusion of the loss of a restaurant. Now, that's a deficiency of the budget calculator. He did suggest that there was a wrangle or a fiddle you can do to the calculator, but he hasn't provided me with any details of how to do that. An alternative way, which we've looked at, is for the applicant to measure the actual water readings over a period of 2 weeks when the restaurant was running and when the restaurant was not running. And the difference is that when the restaurant alone is between the use 400 and 600 litres per day. And the average figure for a dwelling on its own is 150 litres per day. So what we're saying is that the loss of the restaurant will be a benefit to the phosphate emissions from this site. So what we're proposing is that you should accept this application, give it permission, and allow it to be permitted, because it will actually increase the benefit.
Can I sort of ask you to wind up now? You've had your 3 minutes, I'm afraid.
I say it will benefit the phosphate emissions from this site. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Martin, you'd like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just on phosphates, the regulations are the habitat regulations, and particularly regulation 63, and that says that if there's likely to be a significant effect on a protected site, in this case the Ramsar, from a development, then the deciding body, that's us on this occasion, has to make an appropriate assessment, and we cannot grant planning permission until we're satisfied that there is evidence to show that it won't be harmful to the Ramsar, or indeed that the phosphates produced from the development will be mitigated so that the development is effectively phosphate neutral. So that is actually saying that it would be unlawful to grant planning permission if you haven't gone or got the evidence to go through that appropriate assessment, which is why the recommendation from officers is for refusal. So my advice to you, I mean, this is seems to be the sole issue about this application, is that I would guard against granting planning permission if that's what you're minded to do. But if you, having heard what the public speaker says, want officers to look more into that, I would urge that route rather than a route that potentially could be unlawful and contrary to the regulations. But obviously it's a matter for members. You know, they may feel that they just wish to go with the officer recommendation or not. But
thank you, Martin. Next we move on to Heather.
Thank you so much, Martin, for making that clear, because that was my understanding as well. I just want to say, and I'm sure, and I don't want to speak necessarily for everybody, but I am when I say we have massive sympathy for the people who are in that position of having a restaurant that is no longer viable, a business no longer viable, which is heartrending in itself, but then to find yourself stuck where you can't necessarily sell it or make it into what you want it to be. So I just want to say that straight off, and I'm sure, sadly, you won't be the only people in this position, and that's massively bad. I think the two things I'm thinking of, one is I do remember, although I'm only a sub on the panel at the moment, but certainly, you know, I've been through this training and I've been through other situations with sat panels like this, and it was made incredibly clear to us what we could not do from a legal point of view because of the way the law is worded. But what I'm really concerned about is, yes, I would love to be saying, let's instruct the officers to go away and look at this some more, because what worries me most is we happen to have adopted, if you like, a policy which has got a very large fundamental flaw in it if it cannot work with the replacement of one thing with another, and that only counts as a positive. So we may have thought of this before, and I'm not aware of it, but that to me makes me think that as a council we're very vulnerable, and our people who we're trying to protect and look after the needs of are also vulnerable. So I would be hopeful in the conversations we have that we can unfortunately park this application somehow, but ask the officers to be looking to find a way through, and certainly to do something on the policy about the calculator.
Right, thank you, Heather. I've got somebody ahead of you, I believe. I think Benty is the next one. I'll get you in a minute, Susie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I would actually say that I would like to ask you to go against the officer's recommendation, because I think this here has been going on for so long, and it is proven now with a couple of headache tablets that the whole system is wrong. We know that the phosphate impact, we know that from meetings we've been to in Taunton, that they are debatable whether they're right or wrong. So actually, I think that this here is a disgrace, to put it mildly. And I feel more than sympathy for the two people sitting over there, because I think it is horrendous. And we should, if nothing else on this planning board, then we should work for such ridiculous laws like this here are being wiped out, because they have got no real meaning for people that lives out there. This here should have been moved away immediately and said, no, we can't do that, go away. And then don't bother us until you have got all the paperwork that is needed. And then maybe that would have helped a little bit. I don't know. And I give up. This here is a disgrace. Thank you.
Right, thank you for your comments, Benty. We've got to go back to Martin again quickly.
yes, just quickly on the calculator, just to be clear, that's the calculator that is adopted Somerset-wide. Every developer that's in the affected area goes through that calculator. That calculator has been approved by Natural England. So it is something that is now standard practice to go through for developers to use that to calculate what their phosphate budget is for a development. And you saw on the screen what the phosphate budget for this development is. That was what was submitted. The regulations are there. You cannot ignore them. So yes, just be mindful of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. We'll do you next first, Susie, please.
I think obviously, thank you very much, Martin, and I understand you're a legal advisor and you know what you're talking about. Ultimately, and particularly if we're going to truly represent the people who voted to put us here, we have to find a way to ensure that we do what common sense dictates. And if that means that we have to stick our neck out and go, we think there's something not quite right here, then we should have the guts to do that, to stand up and do that. And you know, at the end of the day, who wants to see yet another empty, boarded up shop in a high street when we don't have enough accommodation for people to live in? So I don't know the perfect way around the legal system or the perfect way around the phosphate calculator, but I do know that common sense dictates we allow these people to do what they're asking us to do.
Okay, thank you, Susie, for your contribution. Next, we go to another Shepton Mallet councillor, Martin, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll agree with my ward member on the fellow ward member on one thing. This thing has been going on a long time. So my question is about what needs to happen to get to officer approval. What do these applicants and we have to do? Okay, I'm happy for the idea of principle have been taken away, but I think we need to know what, just get a feel of the sort of things we should be looking at. What does mitigation mean here to enable this application to be receive officer approval?
Thank you.
Yeah, Mick.
Thank you. I seem to remember that something was allowed. I can't remember if it was a housing estate or something was allowed because a pig factory was taken out of commission as a mitigation, right? Now, here, someone is taking their restaurant out of commission, and there's no reason why that can't be taken into account, even though someone's got to work out. I mean, I have to ask, did the occupants stay there, live there? Were they worked there? So they could have been there all day using it and using the toilets, and then the customers will be using the toilets. You know, I think that calculation can be done to work out what the emissions, the phosphate emissions from that was. And then if there's a discrepancy between the two, there must be, by now, someone must have worked out how we can mitigate that and come back to the applicant and say, you have to do this, it might cost you a little bit, and this is your option, because otherwise, as you say, nothing can happen. So that's what the officers perhaps could go away and look at. But I think there's every reason to use that precedent as a reason to offset. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. There are a number of mitigation schemes available. The one that you've referenced in terms of the removal of the pigs from a site, that was to set up a credit scheme so people can buy credits from that site to offset their phosphates on their own development. So this applicant could buy credits from that scheme to offset their phosphate deposition. There's other things that can be looked at, such as improving septic tanks, PCPs. But it is all outlined on our website, so the advice is there, and hopefully it's quite clear, and we can obviously go through it with them if needed.
We can't sort that out today, can we? Because if they said...
No, we can't sort that out today.
Okay, I'm coming back in here before Helen comes in. Julie, you'd like to say something?
Just to clarify, this is not something that officers, as in at Somerset Council, have put together. This is something that Natural England have defined. It's not something that the officers in this room can do anything about. So just to be clear, I'm not quite sure of the comments around kind of the disgraceful and what have you are. But this isn't something that officers in this room, or indeed in Somerset Council, or indeed in Somerset Council, indeed in Somerset Council can make decisions on. This has to be referred through Natural England and other bodies, including ecology, which is why it's not a straightforward process at all. We wish we weren't in this situation. We are. Now, I can see what the applicants are concerned about. I can also empathise, because something that I'm dealing with on a separate project has put me in a I won't describe it as an equally complex situation with a number of more people involved in that. So I do have a lot of sympathy. However, these rules are not rules made by the council, they are made by a national body, and that's just something you will need to be aware of in whatever course you recommend moving forwards. Thank you.
No, thank you, Julie. I'd just like to come in and ask a question, maybe a bit stupid. Is it possible for us to defer this for a couple of months, for this to be sorted out elsewhere, and for the applicant to come back again then? I think that might be the most common sense way forward, if possible.
Can I just clarify that the applicants have in the past been requested to provide this additional evidence, hence the delay in getting it here, and they have declined to do so. So if they wish to now, but this is why there has been such a delay, to clarify for your councillor level, we have explained our position. We have, obviously the figures were presented with the application. All of the information is on our website, and we have, as Julie has explained, that it is the rules we have to follow. We've explained there's no other issues. It is purely this phosphates. And if they wanted to provide additional evidence to support it, we would accept that.
Thank you, Lorna.
Chair, to answer your question, yes, it's in the gift of the committee to defer the item for the applicant is here, and obviously is hearing what the debate for that issue to be resolved with officers, if possible.
Before we continue with, with our debate, could it be possible for the applicant to say whether they would be receptive to such an offer? I can't hear what you said. Yeah, I know the people are waiting to speak. I just want to get an idea from this gentleman.
Good afternoon. My name's Nick Reed and I'm the chef proprietor of Rustin's Restaurant. We've worked and lived above the restaurant for 38 years. During that period, we have bought 2 cottages adjoining the main restaurant to expand our living accommodation and our restaurant for a growing family and the needs for a bigger restaurant. We have tried to sell it, as Mr. Christian explained, but to no avail. I think at the moment, the times are quite difficult and people won't take on new businesses because the banks aren't lending money and everything like that. So we thought the ideal route